They're fierce.
Oh my God!
That car's flying!
Intense. Destructive and dangerous.
Hurricanes. Oh my God, go, 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 go. A massive threat each year.
We're likely to see water still well above normal, even if not record warm.
The hot water in the Atlantic and Caribbean, fueling powerful storms.
Whoa.
Florida's Big Bend struck by a Category 3 hurricane.
The Gulf is completely out of its banks.
Idalia, the strongest storm in more than 130 years to hit the area.
An intensity that is growing.
We're in sort of a new world where the strongest storms are really unprecedented.
Every season reminding us we cannot take this menace lightly.
When hurricane season comes, we're not gonna play around with it.
The 2024 Atlantic hurricane season is here.
And your Weather Authority team is making sure you are prepared.
With guidance, expertise, and the expectations you need to know.
This is Staying Storm Safe in Hot Water.
Sponsored by FPL. At FPL, we're dedicated to keeping you safe and informed throughout the storm season. Learn more at fpl.com/storm. And by All American Roofing, the roofing company you can trust.
It's hurricane season again, and we're heading offshore.
All right, let's go.
Ready? Keeping an eye on everything happening all around us. Local 10 is here to keep you storm safe through it all. I'm Chief Certified Meteorologist Betty Davis.
And I'm hurricane specialist and storm surge expert Mike Wolari. We're here off the coast of Isla Mirada, and as the hurricane season ramps up, we're seeing record hot temperatures. This map shows us the extent of the unprecedented warmth. From the Gulf of Mexico to the coast of Africa, the water is warmer today than it typically is in August and September, at the height of the hurricane season. Hurricanes are fueled by warm water, and the simple fact is, the hotter the water, the stronger a storm can get. Let's look back on 2023. It was an active hurricane season, more than half of it occupied by named storms.
In fact, it ranked 4th for the most named storms in a single year. But for the first time in nearly a decade, South Florida was never in the cone.
2023. An above-average hurricane season marked by unprecedented warmth in the Atlantic. And with the heat comes strength.
The way we like to think of it is like when you go to the gas station and you have to choose which pump you're going to use, which octane of fuel you're going to use. Hurricanes like that high-octane fuel, and that's what warm waters are the equivalent of. They just keep the storm going, they inject it with energy.
Counteracting one of the strongest El Niños on record and surprising forecasters.
Usually during El Nino years, we tend to say that activity will be suppressed. We won't have as many storms, not as much to worry about. And in fact, this past year was quite the opposite. We actually got all the way up to the T storm, Tammy. So that's a lot of named storms for what's a El Nino year.
So many that more than half of the 6-month hurricane season was occupied by active storms. Chart-topping ocean heat fueling Category 5 Lee in the Atlantic. And supercharging Hurricane Otis in the eastern Pacific. From a tropical storm to a Category 5 in less than 24 hours. Otis striking Acapulco head-on with catastrophic consequences.
Warm waters can fuel rapid intensification or fast strengthening. And that particular storm fed off those waters and rapidly intensified just before it made landfall in Acapulco.
Otis blowing away forecasts, prompting National Hurricane Center meteorologists to call the storm a nightmare scenario. Robbie Berg, senior hurricane specialist with the National Hurricane Center, says Otis should remind South Floridians it can happen here.
It has been a long time since the major part of the metro area. If people remember those storms, it's a wake-up call that, while we've been lucky to not get direct impact, this year or the year after that may not be our lucky year.
Whoa.
And it did happen here in the Sunshine State.
The Gulf is completely out of its banks.
Category 3 Hurricane Idalia striking Taylor County. Storm surge up to 12 feet.
No!
4 people dying in Florida when the storm flooded coastal towns and cities along Florida's Big Bend and all the way to southwest Florida.
Well, this part of the state hasn't necessarily seen a storm like this in quite some time.
That car's flying!
It was the strongest hurricane to hit this part of the Gulf Coast since the 1890s.
People were stranded in their houses and couldn't get out. Can't believe this. I've never seen nothing like it.
Idalia took advantage of some of the warmest waters ever recorded in the Gulf of Mexico.
The whole downtown is just desolation. I don't think anybody expected it to be quite this bad.
An estimated $2.5 billion in damage left behind. As we begin yet another hurricane season, record high water temperatures remain across the Atlantic's main development region, where most of the strongest hurricanes form. But this season, forecasters say El Nino won't stick around to help counteract all that warmth.
Storms absolutely have the potential to rapidly intensify like an Otis before they strike the United States. The after effects of a storm like that would be incredible. Not just the damage that would incur, but just the way that society functions. We would probably be without power for days, if not weeks.
While forecasts for the season can't tell us when or where a hurricane might strike in 2024, the growing threat for rapidly strengthening storms like Otis teach us time isn't always on our side.
These events can be very dangerous, and the timeline that we have to prepare could be very condensed.
Which means having your hurricane plan in place now and knowing where you'll go before you need to evacuate is the best defense against the next big one that comes our way. Otis, so devastating for Mexico that its name has been retired by the World Meteorological Organization. That's the group that oversees the rotating list of storm names.
As the waters get hotter, so does the danger for strong hurricanes. And a new study suggests that the warming oceans may be tilting the scale that we use to measure the strength of hurricanes. Right now, the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale goes from Category 1 to Category 5. But is it time to add a Category 6? Category 5, the top of the hurricane scale, a status earned by fewer than 1 in every 50 storms. And with only 4 known strikes on the U.S. mainland, including Hurricane Andrew in 1992, this rare breed of ultra-powerful hurricane doesn't come often. But new research warns these catastrophic hurricanes are becoming stronger, courtesy of climate-fueled warming, with authors proposing a Category 6 to account for extreme winds not observed in the past.
It's actually quite simple by why the potential for Category 6 storms has increased, and that's that climate change has made both the ocean temperatures warmer and as well as the air temperature.
Dr. Michael Weiner is a senior scientist studying extreme weather and climate at Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory in California. In a study published earlier this year, he and his colleagues examined the 200 or so Category 5 storms seen globally from 1980 to 2021 to determine if any of them had strong enough winds to warrant a hypothetical Category 6 rating. They found 5 storms that were so strong they topped the traditional Saffir-Simpson's hurricane scale and would meet the study's criteria for Category 6, with each of the 5 happening in the past decade.
Look at this infrared satellite presentation of this storm. It just says power.
This recent spate of ultra-intense storms is unprecedented and worrying. And while none of these Category 6s occurred in the Atlantic, the study did find a significant increase in the number of days that have the right conditions to support these ultra-strong hurricanes in areas close to the U.S., like the Gulf of Mexico and Caribbean.
As far as we can tell, it's only a matter of luck that we haven't had a storm on those days when the conditions were ripe for a Category 6 storm.
With the 2024 hurricane season gearing up, These nearby areas are of particular concern for top-end threats.
Particularly this year, with ocean temperatures being particularly high again.
Whether or not these new findings mean we need a new category is debatable. And many of the nation's hurricane experts, including the director of the National Hurricane Center, push back on the idea.
Category 5, if you look at the definition, is catastrophic damage from a wind perspective. There's not much more you can say beyond that. So trying to go above and beyond that, I'm not sure would have a lot of value in communicating the wind hazard.
The over-reliance on scales encourages a comparison of hurricanes that are more often different than alike.
The Saffir-Simpson scale it's a wind scale, so it can tell you what the sort of damage potential of the peak winds in that hurricane are, and that's useful information, but it's limited to that one particular hazard.
Nevertheless, with the world's oceans hotter today than at any point in the recent past, the chart-topping hurricanes of today may be the more commonplace threat of the future. And for us in South Florida, a scary close call with Hurricane Dorian in 2019, which very nearly met the study's Category 6 criteria while just 200 miles off our coast.
Coming up, a crisis off our coast. Coral is in such hot water, it's getting bleached.
Plus, 2 years later, Fort Myers Beach has still not fully recovered from Hurricane Ian. We take you there.
And flying planes in the world's worst weather.
Computer models need real measurements, and that's what we're doing here.
The NOAA hurricane hunters going above, around, and into the storms. Next.
The North Atlantic Ocean is in its second year of record heat. We expect another bustling season, and that means the hurricane hunters are busier than ever.
That's right, and Weather Authority meteorologist Brandon Orr met up with the NOAA hurricane hunters as they prepare for the season ahead.
You're looking at a P-3 Orion, the same exact hurricane hunter aircraft that flew through Hurricane Andrew back in 1992 before it devastated South Florida, and will be the same aircraft to navigate the next big Florida hurricane. As people on the ground are evacuating and moving away from hurricanes, the NOAA hurricane hunters are moving toward the storm, flying straight into the eye wall. Do your friends and family think you're crazy for doing this?
Yeah.
Some may say it's crazy, but these jobs are important. In fact, they're the most vital piece of the puzzle when it comes to forecasting tropical systems. Take us through the process from a storm is forming out there, you're creating your first flight plan for this storm, and how you change your ideas. How does that process go through some of your final flights?
We will actually be watching with the Hurricane Center these waves coming across the Atlantic as they begin developing into tropical storms. Quite often what we'll do is we'll take our aircraft and deploy down to the Caribbean so that we can get to flying on them as soon as they're directly threatening the United States.
Flight Director Richard Henning has been doing this for decades.
Once we get into the storm environment, the idea is that you want to make sure that everybody on the plane gets home safe.
As he and the other NOAA hurricane hunters are in the air, the data they collect is sent back in real time to meteorologists on the ground, and then relayed to all of us.
The first hurricane of the season.
Waiting for the latest updates on wind and strength.
And these dropsondes that are deployed out of the bottom of the plane measure everything from temperature to wind speed all the way down to the surface. This is just one of 3 different generations, including this smaller version being used and transitioned into this season, and even an experimental one.
The gadgets they use may not be very large, but their impact is vast, measuring the winds from up in the sky all the way down to ground level, scanning the storm like an MRI, and calculating waves and sea spray.
That data gets processed here, and from that we get an idea of how strong the winds are at the surface.
Yes, and the great thing about this instrument is that the stronger the hurricane, the more accurate it becomes.
As the crew on board is gathering that crucial information, the one at the helm of the aircraft is Lieutenant Commander David Keith.
So we have our yoke, this manipulates our ailerons, it helps roll the plane left and right.
He makes 3 to 4 passes through each storm, flying for about 8 hours straight.
Computer models need real measurements, and that's what we're doing here. Our job is so important because we're trying to make sure everyone is safe and keeping their eye on the ball for aircraft safety.
As far as the future of hurricane hunters, both Keith and Henning say the technology and forecasts will only continue to advance.
The storms are very powerful, they're complex, they're ever-changing, so we have to work as a team.
And when hurricane season wraps up at the end of November, the work doesn't stop there. There is no off-season for science. Work continues flying into wintertime storms and even severe weather systems.
From up in the sky to under the sea, the coral reef that run alongside South Florida, vital to protecting our coastline in a hurricane.
Some parts of the Florida Keys are being exposed to twice the amount of heat stress that causes coral reefs to die. Local 10's Janine Stanwood shows us what's happening underwater.
We're heading to Lou Key Sanctuary in the lower Keys.
Now you're clear.
And going beneath the surface to witness the majesty of the Florida Keys Coral Reef, the third largest barrier reef in the world.
Yeah, without the barrier reef, it's hard to imagine the Keys would be there.
Scientists like Jim Hench with Duke University have always known the reef absorbs the energy of waves that would otherwise crash on shore.
And these beams form an antenna.
But it wasn't until Hench's team placed these sensors on part of the reef off Key West in 2021 that we learned just how much a living reef matters during a hurricane. Months later, that's when Hurricane Ian barreled through. It was a real-life test.
The hurricane was generating 26-foot waves at the peak of Ian. And so the question was, how come we don't see 26-foot waves here in Key West?
Data showed the reef reduced wave energy by more than 90%.
I think I was amazed at how frictional those reefs are.
But then another challenge to our reef made headlines: heat. Last year's unprecedented sustained high water temperatures past 90 degrees resulted in major coral bleaching. Scientists at NOAA reporting more than 75% of some corals that were restored and outplanted were dead.
We lost a lot of coral colonies. It's like losing a friend in a lot of ways.
What could that mean for the next hurricane season?
Yeah, I mean, who knows quite yet?
The biggest single problem, though, is water temperature. I don't know how we're going to combat that.
Back on the boat at Lou Key, divers and conservationists are watching closely and have seen a decline in corals. But they say all is not lost.
We lost a lot of the branching corals, there's no question of that. But most of our massives, ones that really play the role to break the waves of hurricanes down, have survived.
It's very difficult when you go out there and you see some of the damage that occurred from the high water temperatures. But the good news is some of it is starting to come back.
The oceans are in trouble, but we have an opportunity to save them.
In fact, saving the coral has been an ongoing effort by local groups working with NOAA's Mission Iconic Reefs. And since last summer's heat wave, researchers are learning more about how moving corals from nurseries to reefs can be more sustainable.
They're planting new corals, they're working in the labs to create more heat-resistant corals, and it's very exciting, really.
That's one of the goals of our project, is to try to understand the interplay between the physics, which is what we work on, and the restoration community, and trying to take our common understanding of how these reefs work and come up with plans that will carry that forward in ways that are productive.
It's a complicated system. There's a lot of things we don't know. It's too important to give up on.
Even though scientists are sounding the alarm about the health of the coral reef in warmer water, they are hopeful that more research and smarter restoration efforts will make a difference.
Coming up, erosion emergency, homes hanging off the edge in Palm Beach County.
It's very scary, that's for sure.
The danger that looms this hurricane season, plus.
I'm meteorologist Peter Sherwood in Fort Myers Beach, an area catastrophically damaged by Hurricane Ian less than 2 years ago. We'll show you how our neighbors to the west are still recovering. Next.
Before the hurricane season starts, remember to download Local 10's Max Tracker app. We'll send important updates directly to your phone. You'll get the latest updates from your Weather Authority meteorologist.
We're out on the Atlantic and the water is hot. It's a similar story for the Gulf of Mexico, also experiencing its hottest year on record in 2023.
It serves as a reminder of what the people of Fort Myers know all too well.
People along Fort Myers Beach enjoying the sand, waves, and restaurants, but still fresh in their minds. The storm that left more than a dozen people dead when it struck in September 2022, leaving Fort Myers Beach unrecognizable. 10 to 15-foot storm surge wiping everything away.
I'm in the heart of Fort Myers Beach, where the pier still needs a lot of work, but some businesses have recovered. The ice cream shop is now open. We have the pizza and grill, but take a look across the street. You can see this building still has a long way to go, and that's what we saw across most of the area.
Miles of businesses and homes wiped away. Disaster recovery signs now posted outside. People living in trailers where their homes once were, and the buildings that are still standing are dealing with this. This was once a restaurant. Now an empty shell filled with dust and debris, with a for sale by owner sign out front. Other restaurants able to keep businesses alive in a new way.
When we lost the restaurant, we had to find a trailer.
Doug Colby is the manager at Yo Taco. He says the people of Fort Myers Beach are not taking any chances this hurricane season.
I think they've seen the worst, so, I mean, more people know what to do now. I mean, hurricane season comes, yeah, we're not gonna play around with it.
He, along with many others, are happy to see progress being made, but know there's a long way to go.
We've seen just the slow rebuild and all that, like the clock over there and the tower getting painted and things like that, but it's still in progress, but you know, there is progress though.
And next door at Buffalo Grill.
This is the charbroiled grill, where everything is done with lump charcoal.
The owners may be from New York.
These are all sayings from Buffalo. Bill's Mafia, obviously.
But they know there is a threat that comes every year in Florida.
So in the event that there is a major hurricane threat, this trailer can be moved out of here.
Fred Malone and Bill Wagner say they know people are ready to get back to their normal lives, and they hope to help.
The people down here have been fantastic. They're very encouraged by the fact that there's things opening up, there's more things to do.
And we're doing whatever we can to help, and we figured this is a good area for our charbroiled deliciousness.
Residents like Christine Brickman also doing their part to help the recovery by eating local and supporting their neighbors.
We've been to Yo Taco, we've been to La Ola, we've been to Margaritaville many, many times. And so we've been bringing in our money and bringing in how delighted we are at the progress that they're making.
It's not only the businesses and the homes like this one recovering, the people are too.
The first several months in all of last year was very difficult, but I think once we got through the 1-year anniversary, that helped a lot of people with their kind of closure. And of course we have moments where you still can't believe it, like stand here in Times Square and you look around and you see still the devastation, but then you turn and you see, okay, there's happy people, there's families that are coming, the beach is full.
Residents have not forgotten, but say they are finally ready to move forward.
The sunset's still here, the beach is still here. You can feel how proud everybody is to be on Fort Myers Beach.
A difficult couple of years, but the town making progress as each minute passes, bringing life back to a sense of normalcy.
Coming up, storm surge concerns.
And it just so happens that, this huge amount of water that's passing by our doorstep here in Miami.
What South Floridians need to know about the looming threat off our shore. Next. It's difficult to imagine Miami Beach washed over in a 10-foot storm surge, but it happened nearly a century ago during the Great Miami Hurricane of 1926. And not only could it happen again, next time it could be even worse than before. The Gulf Stream. The world's fastest ocean current, with some of the warmest, deepest waters on this side of the Atlantic, lurking just miles off our shores, is changing, but not for the better.
So we believe that that's weakened by about 4% over the last 40 years.
New research from the world's foremost ocean experts, including Dr. Lisa Beal, professor of oceanography at University of Miami's Rosenstiel School, find waters in the lower reaches of the Gulf Stream near South Florida, known as the Florida Current, are slowing and at an alarming rate.
We understand that at a very fundamental level, that the ocean, the flow in the ocean, just like winds in the atmosphere, is occurring because of pressure differences. It basically means that if the water is flowing, the sea level is not flat. It has a slope across it. And it just so happens that, this huge amount of water that's passing by our doorstep here in Miami is associated with a sea level slope that's lower, where the sea surface is lower near Miami and higher near the Bahamas.
But as the Gulf Stream current slows, the sea level seesaw rises higher in Miami, into our streets, neighborhoods, homes, and businesses on sunny days, and setting the stage for bigger storm surges with the next hurricane. It's been almost a century since the last catastrophic storm surge swept across Miami Beach and into downtown Miami. A 10-foot torrent of salt water turned Miami Beach into what journalist Marjorie Stoneman Douglas called a sea of raving white water. But 1926 Miami, even at the height of Florida's first land boom, was a rural settlement compared to today's densely built beachfront, bayshore, and intracoastal. And seas today are starting at over a foot higher than in 1926, largely from a warming Atlantic, and expected to accelerate another foot or more by mid-century, hastened by the slowdown of the world's fastest ocean current.
It doesn't seem like much. It's about 4%, or one spare drop, which is 1 million meters cubed per second of water passing by Miami.
This 1-2 punch of higher ocean heat, fueling stronger hurricanes and seas reaching new heights, puts South Florida and its booming coastline on the brink of its next hurricane disaster. Weather Authority meteorologist Julie Durda joining us now. And Julie, as we know down here in South Florida, we're not only dealing with the hot water.
The hot weather, temperatures playing a major role in day-to-day life.
That's right, Betty and Michael. No surprise Florida is hot. We're here on the baseball field taking the proper precautions to keep the kids safe from the heat. The heat can affect your health.
Make sure you're drinking water, guys. Drinking water, guys. Stay hydrated.
The heat in South Florida is a grand slam.
Stay low, stay low, stay low.
Last year, South Florida experienced a record-breaking year in terms of high temperatures.
Out in front, out in front.
And when the temps rise, youth baseball coach Ray Sibley takes extra precautions to keep his athletes safe.
I always tell the kids the day before to make sure you're drinking a lot of water, to make sure you're hydrated as much as possible.
He uses fans and cooling towels so that the players don't overheat.
Once they get it on, they just use it, put it around their necks, and then just dump it right back in there.
But what can this heat do to us long term? It's something scientists at the University of Miami are studying.
This is our chamber where we put our animals. Here in this lab, we try to simulate conditions that Floridians are exposed to.
Dr. Naresh Kumar with Miller School of Medicine researches how heat stress affects the body.
We expose animals and then we document their ability to thermoregulate heat.
His research shows being exposed for long periods of time can actually trigger negative health effects.
The genes which are upregulated, they are found in people who have neurological disease, for example, Alzheimer, Parkinson's.
We're here at the lab at University of Miami. They use animals for us to learn how our body actually adapts or does not adapt to a different temperature and a different feels like temperature. So everything combining together we're able to do right here. These images of the lungs show as the temperatures go up, our ability to exchange carbon dioxide and oxygen actually goes down.
Further, at the same magnification, you expose them to heat stress. They were completely collapsed. So meaning these guys are really suffocating to get oxygen.
So what can you do?
Climate change, extreme weather. I said this, you cannot stop it, I cannot stop it. It's going to happen. All you can do is get yourself ready for it, prepare what kind of things you can do. And biological training is one of them.
Let's go.
Coach Ray understands the temperatures are being hit out of the park. He hopes his players do the same.
Good job, good job. I love coaching kids. I love coaching the youth. I hope developing kids to be ball players. If they want it, it makes me want it even more.
Coming up, less gas, more battery. More drivers are going electric. The pros and cons of driving one of these high-tech rides during the hurricane season.
But first, we head back on shore to talk about the threat of beach erosion. Next.
We're back with stunning images of beach erosion to our north. Homes left hanging over the sand in the Jupiter Inlet. High surf and winds are to blame, but what if a hurricane were to hit the area? The waves eating away at the coastline, destroying property.
Weather Authority meteorologist Brandon Orr shows us the concerns for safety.
More than 3 months after a powerful wintertime storm caused significant beach erosion here along the coast in Jupiter, work continues to restore the beaches in a battle that seems like it just doesn't end. Surfers are out on the water, people walking along the shore, a different sight compared to just 3 months ago in Jupiter Inlet Colony.
It was flat, like probably up until like where this area is here, then a straight drop.
A neighborhood targeted by Mother Nature. Weeks of severe weather leading to this. 6 homes in the small town of around 500 hanging over the edge, nearly crashing into the sand. The cause? Beach erosion. A bird's eye view showing the extent of the damage. One home's pool left completely exposed. And months later, construction work is still underway.
Our first concern is restoring this habitat.
Kylie Ariati is an environmental analyst with Palm Beach County Environmental Resources Management. She and her team work to keep the beaches in the best place possible by planting new dunes and bringing in fresh sand. But what happens after that is out of their control.
These are all natural things that are going to happen. They occur on cyclical years through different weather patterns that aren't that heavily understood, but they are occurring, and we know that they're going to continue to occur.
The good news? All of the sand that we no longer see is still in the system, and it'll come back.
It sits just here in our nearshore troughs. It sits off in sandbars, and during our calmer months during the summer, we actually see that sand move ashore, this natural recovery that kind of comes back.
The sand is not always leaving.
No, it's not. It's in an interchangeable system here, moving offshore and back onshore.
But once the calendar turns to March,
you can see this is roped off and protected.
And through November?
We now have another layer of protection that has to go in while construction is going on, and that's sea turtle nesting preservation.
Sea turtle biologists coming to the beach every morning during construction projects, looking for any signs of nesting.
We have a leatherback nest that was actually marked during the project. So you can see 216, so obviously we had already started placing sand here. And you can see there's kind of a gap in the dune.
Ariati's main concern:
restoring this habitat for the protected species like these sea turtles that are nesting up here, as well as for recreational value for people that are going to come and utilize our beaches.
The homeowners in Jupiter Inlet Colony left footing the bills for repairs to their homes.
How much money is this going to take to repair all of it? And what should I have done in the beginning to prevent that from happening? It's costly. It's very scary, that's for sure.
While there may not be a one-time permanent fix to this beach erosion problem, officials say that they are in the best place possible ahead of hurricane season.
We are going electric. EVs are taking charge of the roads.
But as Weather Authority meteorologist Jordan Patrick shows us, one roadblock these drivers should think about is what they'll do in a hurricane.
South Florida is getting charged up. They may be silent rides, but their presence speaks volumes. But with the surprising number of new owners, many have never gone through a hurricane with their electric car. So that begs the question, how exactly should you prepare with an EV?
If I have power at home, I'm going to drive it as normal. Take it, go do our errands, whatever. If streets aren't flooded, get home and be able to charge it at night.
Tesla owner Dan Bruderlin shows us the biggest advantage to owning an EV. Home charging.
I bought the FPL charger.
Meaning when a storm comes, no need to wait in long lines at the gas station or deal with fuel shortages after a storm.
And every day I get home from work, I plug this one in, and it starts to charge automatically at 9 or 10 p.m. off peak hours, and when I wake up in the morning, the car's fully charged.
That all sounds good, but what if you're told to evacuate? Well, a prime concern for EVs is having the range to get to your destination, a fear experts say is not a pressing issue for a few reasons.
You don't have to go hundreds of miles. Safety could be just 10 miles away from where you live today.
Kevin Guthrie is the executive director of the Florida Division of Emergency Management.
The one thing that we would ask people to do starting in hurricane season is keep their electric charges as full as possible as they move around about their day.
Jonathan Sanchez is the tech lead and director of operations at EV Garage Miami. He says when a storm is approaching, EV manufacturers will often issue software updates to increase your range.
If you are just sitting on the highway and you're stuck in traffic, you are still losing range, as you would in a traditional gas car.
That extended battery life can help you evacuate.
So you can charge the vehicle and get much further in times of crisis.
In the event your EV does need a little extra juice,
the Florida Department of Transportation, in conjunction with FPL, are working on a multi-year project to add more charging stations to evacuation routes.
Last season, FPL introduced this mobile charging station that they can bring to hard-hit areas to get EV drivers moving. But don't be fooled. These are not toy car batteries by any stretch.
For anyone worried about range issues, the battery is literally the size of the car.
And some newer models are even taking it one step further.
If there's an EV vehicle that might be dead on the road with no charge, one that has bi-directional charging can come to you, give you a boost, and help you continue on your way.
Another concern with EVs is deep water. All of these high-tech rides are designed with safety measures to avoid disaster.
This pyroFuse is designed literally to pretty much pop with a small little pyrotechnic device, and that'll essentially break the physical connection of the battery, the high voltage battery, to the rest of the vehicle to contain that energy again in the battery packs.
There are pros and cons to both EVs and internal combustion engines during a hurricane scenario. But for Dan, he knows when a storm comes, his Tesla just needs to be juiced up.
If a hurricane is coming, my thoughts are I was going to charge it up to 100%, which is more than I normally do just to commute every day back and forth to work. And if the streets are dry enough, I will drive it as long as I can get home to charge it or get to a supercharger to charge it.
And remember, in the event of a power outage or an evacuation, there are plenty of apps that'll highlight charging stations near you or along your route. Most EVs have charging station locations built into their navigation systems, and some, like this one, can even tell you how long wait times are. We'll be right back.
Still to come, making sure one of the most vulnerable areas of South Florida is protected. The new Emergency Operations Center coming to the Keys.
The Florida Keys are one of the most vulnerable areas of South Florida when it comes to tropical systems. They've seen more than their fair share, and they've been doing so without their own emergency operations center.
Well, this year, Monroe County is making progress on its new EOC, and Local 10's Janine Stanwood got an exclusive look.
It's taken a long time. It's past due.
With reinforced concrete walls, a 20-foot elevation, and designed for 220-mile-per-hour winds, the Emergency Operations Center in the Florida Keys will be ready for this storm season. We were here when construction started. What a difference a year makes.
So this is the Incident Command Center.
Yes, this is the center, the hub of everything. So this is our main video screen.
This is where local and state officials and weather experts can convene.
Depending on the emergency, the response is organized and monitored from this room.
And this is where the county's 911 call center will be housed permanently.
This is the commercial kitchen that will be able to feed our operations team.
There's also a dedicated kitchen and dining area.
So check this out. This is one of the women's bathrooms equipped with lockers. The bank of toilets are right over here. And then come out here, you can see that over here, this is where all of the showers are. This is essentially so first responders can live here during an emergency.
In fact, these are giant water tanks, so the building can be off the grid and totally self-sufficient for 72 hours. And decision makers can all be under one roof.
Communication is key in times of need, whether it's hurricane, whether it's a man-made disaster.
Having a dedicated EOC has been a long time coming. In 2017, when Hurricane Irma came roaring through, county officials had to evacuate this government building where the old EOC was housed.
It was not rated for as big of a storm as Hurricane Irma was.
That was a wake-up call. Thanks to state and federal dollars, this $32 million project was possible.
We've seen in recent years that storms are getting stronger and stronger. Now is the time to be prepared.
Monroe County officials say this is now one of the most fortified EOCs in the state, ready to serve the people of the Florida Keys for decades to come.
The season predictions are in. So how many storms should we expect this year? Hear from the experts next.
The predictions for the season are in. NOAA calling for an above normal and extraordinary hurricane season, with 17 to 25 named storms, 8 to 13 of those becoming hurricanes, 4 to 7 of them Category 3 or stronger. The warm water fueling NOAA's highest forecast ever issued.
Colorado State University hurricane researchers also calling for an extremely active season. 23 named storms, 11 of those becoming hurricanes, 5 Category 3 or stronger.
I spoke to CSU's senior research scientist who says the record warmth in the Atlantic is the main factor driving up their numbers this year.
When you're looking at something warming that quickly, we have climate change that kind of loads the dice, but when you're talking about something going on that quickly, that's weather. And you need to be prepared the same for every hurricane season, and now's the time to do it. You have plenty of time between now and when the storms really ramp up, so make sure you have your plan in place, know what you're going to do if storms threaten, and then if they do threaten, follow the advice of your local emergency managers.
And remember, the earlier you plan, the better prepared you'll be.
So head to local10.com and check out our hurricane section to download our hurricane survival guide. In it, you'll find preparation checklists, numbers for county resources, a list of shelters, and much more.
And you can keep an eye on the tropics with our Max Tracker app, where you'll get the latest updates from your Weather Authority meteorologists. You can find it in your app store. So remember to make a plan, South Florida.
Get ready for this season in hot water. Thanks for watching.
Local 10 Staying Storm Safe is sponsored by FPL. At FPL, we're dedicated to keeping you safe and informed throughout the storm season. Learn more at fpl.com/storm. And by All American Roofing, the roofing company you can trust.